bribe checks and so on. Usually bribe checks start at about $500,000 to give you kind of an idea, and work up into the millions. But then they've got almost all the money in the world. Why should they worry? You spend a $5 bill and you panic. For what a $5 bill feels like to you, $1 million feels like to them. So believe me, they've got the financial strength to do it. The fifth one was totally different. It's very thick, about 30 pages, and it was handwritten. Now, according to the laws of witchcraft, if anything is religious, it must be written in a special ink with a dip pen, and the person who's writing it, own handwriting. Nobody, you don't dictate it. It doesn't get typed up. Nobody writes it for you. Now, in the Illuminati, the Rothschilds are not humans. They're not just the richest family in the world. They are gods in human bodies. More or less the counterfeit of what Jesus Christ was when he was on the earth. They're the sons and daughters of Lucifer in human body, and his wife and so on. So that this council that I was on is the private priesthood of those gods. And when those gods talk, the priests listen and the priestesses listen. Then they tell political people. That's why a handful of witches have so much power over so many political people. Because they're simply just like a tape recorder for some very powerful people that everybody else considers to be holy and to be gods. So we opened this one in Philip Rothschild's handwriting, and it would have been the same to, well, it was like, the gods sent their own private message. So we opened it up. Dr. Buckland started reading it. It's a chart. A friend of mine, Dr. Tom Berry, has placed that chart in a 30-page book, and we're proofing it now, and Dr. Stuart Crane is going to publish it, and we hope to have it in Christians' hands in about 3 months. It's a step-by-step plan beginning in 1973 at the first of the year to the end of 1980 to take over the world by taking over the United States. Now, before you think that that's impossible, I've watched the news over the past 5.5 years, and they're not only on schedule, but they're a year ahead of schedule. And when I told people this 5 years ago, they thought I was crazy, like a lot of people think now. When I told them that we were supposedly not going to have any fuel, although we were going to have it, and that the gasoline prices were going to go sky high, I even told them a crazy story that the farmers were going to go on strike and the coal mines were going to close down. Now, I wonder where I could have gotten a crazy idea like that. And I was saying it 5 years ago. Only when I went on the East Coast this time, nobody was laughing because they were getting cut back on electricity and people were only working 20 hours a week because there wasn't any coal. So after reading this, I thought, these people are really crazy. Crazier and crazier. But I stopped laughing when I read the sixth letter. It was in Philip Rothschild's handwriting, too. Now, before I tell you what's in it, I want to say something. The Mormon doctrine and the witchcraft doctrine are almost identical in how the world began. According to the witches, Lucifer chose his son and his daughter, which were married, to come to the world and lead the rest of his little kids down here. Believe it or not, they're supposed to have landed in a flying saucer. And they landed here, and man was just more or less assuming their shape from apes. And they intermarried with man, and that's how, the original people were the witches that arrived, and their children became the witches, and the ones that they didn't marry with are the mortals. If you remember Bewitched, you remember the doctrine of witches and mortals. Now, that may seem a little crazy to you, but they firmly believe it. And that Adam, who had the ability to turn back into other lives again, like everybody else did not. Because when the evilness of man settled into the garden, and that's why the garden was bad. There's no original sin according to witches. And Lucifer had planned to come and live on this world along with his children, but he couldn't because of all the evilness of man. And when they say that, I almost feel like they want to write Christians sometimes, the way the doctrine goes. But Adam would come back to bring peace to the world and to unpollute it so his father could come back. Now, that's their doctrine.